Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to an all-new episode of Let's Get Nostalgic. This is the podcast where I talk about everything nostalgic. Today, I have a very special guest. She is the creator of the X-Men, the animated series, Miss Julia Lewald.
Well, let me correct you there a little bit. Plus, you get two for the price of one today. I'm here with Eric Lewald, who actually the guy who made X-Men, the animated series, developed it for television. And I'm one of the script writers on the show. We are married, and we are here to talk to you from Los Angeles, California.
Oh, that's great. My apologies for that, Miss Julia.
That's all right. She doesn't mind getting a little extra credit sometimes.
Okay. I'm sorry.
But how do you want us to refer to you? Dr. Jazzman or what?
Yes, that'll be great. That would be fine.
We'll give it a shot. Okay. And you're talking to Julia and Eric here.
Yes. Okay. So I have some questions for you guys. And let's start with this one. How did you become writers for the X-Men series?
Well, I don't even know if you're old enough to remember the X-Men series. That's my first question.
Well, I just started watching it back last year when I started watching season 1.
Oh, okay. All right. So I wasn't wrong. You were a little young to have watched it first time around then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We got, like so many things, we got the job because we'd worked before with the people that were doing the hiring. Fox Kids Network.
Which doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, the 20th Century Fox network. They, the people that ran it, the head of the Kids Network is named Margaret Lesh, and her number one guy in charge of managing the shows was named Sidney Iwander. Those two people are folks I'd worked with a couple, 3 times before in the business doing other shows for them. So when time came around that they were going to make an X-Men show, I guess they just figured, they looked at the list of people they worked with and trusted and liked, and I guess they just thought I was the best choice for the show. So I didn't know the X-Men really.
No.
It was just had to do with them hiring me because they thought my writing, my skills fit for the show.
And to clarify, Eric and I met at the Disney Afternoon back in the late 80s, early 90s, writing for Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, Winnie the Pooh, Goof Troop, Darkwing Duck, and
those are my favorite shows. I had no idea, y'all. I had no idea you made those.
Well, we were writers on those.
Yeah, I didn't know y'all was writing for that. That's pretty great.
Yeah. Thank you. But that's where we met, and then after 3 years there, we each entered the freelance market, and that's when Eric and I were each doing different jobs for different companies, and Eric ended up doing the second year. Am I right?
The final year of Beetlejuice.
Final year of Beetlejuice, which was on Fox Kids, and that's where.
And that was just before they did X-Men, and so Margaret and Sidney just had a good year working with me, so they just figured they'd give me the chance on X-Men.
Oh, that's great. Now, speaking of X-Men, what made you get into doing the series?
The phone call from Fox Kids offering Eric a job.
yeah. We had a little, a baby, about the time it was about 10 months old, and this was like 10 months of work. So it was, and with people we liked. So it's just we didn't know how good or bad X-Men the stories were going to be, or what the characters were really like. But we knew that it was a good deal of work for us, and that it was we're going to be working for 2 of our very favorite people. I mean, you find out after a while in our business that it's often more important who you're working for than what it is you're working on, and those are 2 of the finest people in the business. So we would have said yes if they just said, just come do a show for us. We have no idea what it is, but we want you to work for us for 10 months, and we would have said yes to a blank slate.
Yep.
For those 2 people.
Yeah.
So that's we took the job because it was a job.
Not very romantic, but that's the truth of it.
And that must have been a fantastic job for you 2. That's
it turned into it was great. We discovered how wonderful the X-Men characters were, and all the 30 years of comics, and all the really creative people that had written, for it on the books, and also it was a great opportunity because it's a real heroic kind of storytelling, which is about my favorite kind. So it all fell together real nicely, and the people on the art side that they hired were really X-Men loving people, and so it was just, it's like one of those things where all the stars aligned, and it was about the best experience we've had in our careers.
Yep.
Oh, that's great. Now, speaking of that, what episode was your favorite to write?
Now, okay, I get to sort of jump the gun here a little bit because the history of the show itself is it's not a straight line. When Eric was hired, it wasn't to write 5 seasons of the show. It was to write 13 episodes for the show.
Just the first season. Because
the folks above Margaret Lesh at Fox Kids were convinced it was going to fail. And so she was convinced it was going to work. And she fought to get what was then considered a single season, 13 episodes. But the caveat was, okay, Margaret, I will let you produce 13 episodes of this series. But if it fails, you no longer have a job here. And she was prepared to take that stand. So in a way, my favorite episodes are the pilot, which is a 2-parter, Night of the Sentinels, parts 1 and 2, because that was what shot this out of the canon. What really established the X-Men animated series. Just because then, if you go back and look, you mentioned you started watching the first 13. When it comes to episodes 11, 12, and 13, which are I just saw my head. What did I write? I wrote it.
Yeah.
Out of the past, not out of the past. Jesus, my brains are fried right now. But I wrote episode 11, and another team wrote 12, and then Mark Edens wrote 13. And that was considered a 3-parter, and that was a very strong out for the series. But you guys, Eric, Days of Future Past parts 1 and 2. Thank you. Days of Future Past. When you and Mark Edens sat down to craft the only 13 episodes you thought you were going to get to do, arc-wise, you planned to knock it out of the park with what could have been the finale for the X-Men
for the whole series. Yeah. We really didn't know after the first 13 if they were going to hire us back, and we and all the artists were let go for about 4 months.
Yep.
Y'all were let go?
Yeah, yep. Yeah. Because we finished our writing the end of July, and the show wasn't going to show till the first week of January. So the fall months, they're not going to keep us on salary. So
darn it.
So we went off and worked on another show for the 4 months, waiting to see if the show was going to be successful
or a failure. It could have been.
It could. And they might hire us back for another season. So that's how kind of iffy it was, which is hard to imagine now. But that was the situation. So yeah, we put a lot into that first season, and then I think we got a little more freedom after that. We realized what we're doing was working real well. So then the next season we were able to tell slightly more personal stories, like
about the characters.
Yeah, and so Julia came up with the idea for the Beast story with the blind girl.
The episode's called Beauty and the Beast, and it's about Hank McCoy helping a blind woman regain her sight, but realizing he's falling in love with her, but he doesn't know how she'll feel about him once she sees
what he looks like. Yeah.
But she does. She still loves him, but her father won't let them be together. Yeah. It is a hard bit. Written by Stephanie Matheson. Great episode.
Yeah. I found out really crazy when I saw that episode.
Okay, do I ask you why you thought it was crazy, or did you like it crazy?
Well, I liked it, but I liked how the whole concept and everything, the storyline was great.
Well, that's nice to hear. Yeah, and especially nice for those, as Eric was saying, the character moments there, where we got to see Beast, who's usually the most confident of the X-Men, but who is the most other, the most different. He can't walk down the street without folks seeing he's a mutant. And in this episode, he, for the first time, has to confront that on his own, for himself. And I think it makes for a wonderful character study. And also the fact that it's the perfect broken romance where he chooses to not be with her because he senses potential danger for her. But it's not because he doesn't love her or she loves him.
So, yeah. So in any case, so you asked about her. Have you seen some of the later episodes? I don't want to ruin the story for you.
Oh, I just got through watching some episodes from season 4. I just got through watching seasons 1, 2, and 3 over the past few months.
Okay, great. Well, go ahead. Pop another question. We're ready.
Okay. Was there any funny moments in the series that you liked?
I'm sorry, any what kind of moments?
Funny moments.
Oh, funny. That, a lot of people, it's fun to look back at it and have folks call out lines to us. Eric and I have had the pleasure of going to some cons and fests and meeting fans of the original series. And part of it is Rogue got a lot of great lines. I think that was also a part of the line reading by actress Lenore Zann, who is the voice of Rogue. And each character had some funny moments, I think.
Yeah, and obviously Morph was funny a lot of the time because he was just playing tricks on people, shape shifting. But one of the ones that the fans like a great deal is when Wolverine's really angry at Cyclops for getting what seems like what looks like getting Morph killed.
Yeah.
He walks into their garage and he cuts off the top of Cyclops' car and just tells Cyclops I made him a convertible. So there are a lot of lines like that I think people found very funny.
And came out of a dark place. I mean, a character had just died for them. So it's not a joke kind of show, but it's the humor coming out of the way a character delivers a line.
Okay. Okay. And speaking of characters, who was your favorite character?
We were just talking about Beast. I love the damaged romantic poet of Beast. He is technically the smartest of the X-Men, and the most, in his own way, like Spock, most logical, but also a poet's soul. Loves to read. And if you watch the first season, when he's in prison, when he's in jail, it's because for him, that's his act of civil disobedience is to demand his day in court, and effectively allows himself to be in jail until he gets to go to court and argue his case about mutants being equal to humans, being humans. And that was a pretty remarkable thing to that story to tell that in what was considered a kid's Saturday morning cartoon. But so my favorite's Beast.
Yeah, and I like Professor Xavier because I was the guy in charge of a bunch of very different writers trying to get the show done. So I felt very much like the old man in the wheelchair trying to get all these people that very, very different people trying to get a job done. And so I empathized with Charles Xavier a great deal. So
there were 76 episodes and about 20 of us different writers. We were all freelance, and some of us wrote more than one, some of us wrote a lot more than one. So that, he was dealing with 20 very different personalities trying to craft a coherent and cohesive series.
I think Beast is probably one of the greatest characters in the series, in my view.
Well, you and
the way that you described him was amazing. And when I saw the episodes, him reading the poetry and all that, I didn't know what to say.
We've had folks come up to us. We've met someone who as an adult, studied philosophy because Beast inspired him. We've had a young man come up who's studying neurosurgery, and because as a kid he saw Beast and thought it was cool. These insane life paths people have taken, wonderful, incredible life paths, that seeing Beast on Fox Kids Saturday morning, kind of tickled their fancy and got them thinking in amazing ways. And I love hearing those stories.
Oh, that's great. Now, for this one, I have a question, and that is, what do you love most about doing this series? Like, What did you love most about, writing it? And
As I mentioned earlier, Eric and I had met. My first writing gig was as a writer for animation was for the Disney Afternoon, and having written there for 3 years, I loved every single series there that I worked on. But it's Disney, and it's a very specific type of audience for writing for. There are a lot of rules, a lot of things you cannot do. And then getting the opportunity to write for X-Men, Margaret Lesh and her chief executive, Sydney Iwanter, from day one, the marching orders to us as writers was, you do not write down to kids. You act like this is a 1 hour live action primetime series, and you write it like that, which I'd never had that kind of freedom writing children's animation before. So that was thrilling. And every decision, every opportunity to have, I'm going to say the word dumb down the show. At every opportunity to dumb down the show, they fought it. They said, no, make it tougher, make it harder, challenge the audience. And that was the first time I'd been given that kind of opportunity in that kind of show. So if you're asking me now, looking back 30 years, that I'm going to say that's what I would say about what I loved about writing for the show, just as what it was.
Yeah, it was a real challenge. It was a sincere challenge, and we got wonderful support from the people we worked for.
Yeah. Yep.
That's great. Now, for the behind the scenes book, now all the archives that were in that book, I don't have it yet, but I might buy it soon.
We can talk to you about that.
Yeah, how did you find all of that to create the book?
So the nice thing is we have 2 books out now about X-Men. The first one is an oral history Eric wrote about the show called Previously on X-Men. And I think if you're referring to the art book, that's our book, X-Men, The Art and Making of the Animated Series, that came out with Marvel and Disney's full support. Now, the trick was it was 30 years later. None of it had been done on computer. We had to go dig through our artist director, Larry Houston, had 3 storage units. He's been a director, producer, artist on over 70 shows. So we got to go dig through his storage units just to see what we could find. He didn't know what he had. Artist Dan Wiesenmeyer has worked on X-Men and had gone to the incredible effort of digitalizing the work he had done on the show. So we found things in different places. There was no archive. There was no archive.
Nobody else kept it. I mean, it just individuals kept stuff. And we kept all the scripts, and we kept all the storyboards. And
so we had that baseline.
Yeah. And then I interviewed, for the first book, like 36 different people.
Who worked on the show.
Yeah, the actors and the artists and the writers and the executives, everybody that worked on the show, the editor. So that was just me sitting down and taking a day or two to talk to each one of them. So that was just, personal legwork. But a lot of the other stuff is just what people held on to, and a lot of artists hold on to stuff they've drawn, and writers hold on to their old scripts.
Oh, also artist Mark Lewis. I want to give him credit too.
Yeah, there was a guy that we bumped into. This is for the second book, the big art book, and he had been in charge of cleaning up, which means he'd been given some the initial designs of the characters, and he would take them and tighten it up and do the final pass on each one to make sure they were all really nice and sharp
and consistent and clean.
And he'd done that from episode 14 on, from the beginning of the second season for the rest of the whole run, and he kept everything.
Yeah.
And so when we were able to find him, and he said, "Oh yeah, I've got. If you want the designs of every character, every guest character that was ever on the show, just let me know. I've got them on computer file. I'll send them over."
Boy, were we lucky!
Yeah, we were lucky on that one because it was random what people kept, and as far as the say animation cells, they were all hand painted. Originally, and there took a couple 100,000 of those per episode of hand painting to animate a show. But they are basically all thrown away because they cost money to maintain, and they deteriorate, and so they're only, to the best of our knowledge, only a few hundred of them left in existence, maybe 1,000.
Yeah.
And we were able to find maybe 150 of them to show in the book.
Oh, also a shout out to Van Eaton Galleries in Studio City, California. They happen to have a really nice supply of beautiful cells from X-Men, and they were very generous with letting us use those in the book. And director-producer Tom Tataranowicz, who himself had several boxes of art that included Iron Man and Fantastic Four, and in there he had some X-Men cells that he let us use.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Now, I'm sure you've heard of Stan Lee.
The name's familiar. It rings a bell.
We sure do. We sure worked with him on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you love? What did you love about working with Stan Lee?
He really was bigger than life. He really was a cheerleader for the whole superhero comic book universe. I mean, that unflagging energy.
Yeah, I mean, he was this walking treasure trove of 50 years of. I mean, he'd been around. He'd been working in comics since he was like a 15-year-old. So since before World War II, and so that was just he had. Yeah, you're right. He had enthusiasm and he had an energy. And when we were working with him, we were all in our 30s, and he was 69. But he was always the first one to a meeting, and he was inspiring that way. And some of the people we were working with, weren't as creative as he was. But at the same time, if you read the books, you'll understand he hadn't really kept up with the X-Men characters. So even though he and the artist Jack Kirby created them back in 1963. He had a real old-fashioned idea of what the X-Men were like.
In 1992.
In 1992, so 29 years later, he hadn't really kept up with the way that the comic had grown and the X-Men had grown. So he had real trouble trying to figure out how to fit in with what we were doing and what the artists were doing with the shows. He also wasn't really a TV person. He was a comics person.
It's a different set of skills. It really is.
It's a different way of writing. So I don't think he ever felt quite like he was part of it, and he always, for the rest of us, it was a weird situation because we loved him, respected him, but we felt he didn't quite understand the way that the show needed to go, and so his name's been on everything that Marvel has done for the last 50 years, but as the Marvel people told us, it was way back to like 1975, about 1975. They used his name on everything, but he really hadn't been creatively involved with Marvel, for at least 15 years by the time we met him.
Oh. That was an amazing story right there. Now, sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, we're done. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Now, I know you've talked about this before. It's about going to conventions. Now, what was, okay. Hang on.
Oh,
that's fine.
Take your time.
Yeah, we're fine.
What do you like about going to conventions?
We hadn't really been going to conventions for very long. We are, and I sort of self-deprecating here, we're just the writers. We're not the artists. We can't draw you anything. We're not the voice talent. We can't recite a line to you. So we didn't really have an entree to Eric and I to go to conventions. But then with the writing of Previously on X-Men, the book, that gave us a nice excuse to start attending cons to meet fans.
About 7 years ago. And obviously the nicest part for us is, when we're writing these shows, and we've written on dozens of them,
Mm-hmm.
X-Men was just the best known of them, the most successful of them. But when we're writing on these shows, we're either at home or we're in an office somewhere, and we're not interacting with our audience the way, say, a music performer is at a concert or an actor is on stage. We're doing the work the best we can, kind of in private, and so we don't really get a sense of if our hard work, if we've gotten across to the audience the way we wanted to. And you go to a con and literally hundreds of people come up to you and tell you how wonderful, it was their favorite show and growing up, or it changed their life, or it was, whatever it was, that they needed to talk to you. And they're almost all there saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. So cons for us are just like 3 days of constant love and gratitude coming from people who we haven't met before and had not had a chance to meet, telling us how much they appreciate the work we've done. And you can't get better than that. That's just what a great situation to be in. So their cons are great fun to us. They're exhausting. Your voice is done by the end of the day, but it's a real good place for us.
Yeah, tremendously rewarding.
Oh, that's great. Now, if y'all were to come to a convention in North Carolina, I would love to meet you guys. Oh. Let me just be honest with that.
Well, let me put it out to you and anyone else who's listening. Please let your local con people know that you'd like us to attend. That we get, it's a matter of us being invited to attend a con, that we get to go somewhere. So, but we're here in Los Angeles. We'd love to go to the East Coast. And I think we are.
And for any friends you've got
later in the year,
in November, they're going to have it's more of a collector's con than it is a Comic Con, but they're having a toy collectors and Comic Con special X-Men convention in Greenville, South Carolina.
Oh.
Greenville in western South Carolina, like around the 10th of November. And we're going to be there, and some of the X-Men cast is going to be there, and a couple of the other X-Men writers and artists. So
I believe it's called Retro Toy Con, but I could be wrong about that. But it is in November, and it is in Greenville.
It's in Greenville. So if you could hitch a ride there, that's not. I know North Carolina's a large state. I don't know what part of it you're in, but you mentioned coming to cons. We are going to be in South Carolina in November.
Oh, all right. I know this series has been talked about for a while. I'm talking about the X-Men 97. Now, I know you two are going to be writers for that show.
Well, we're
not writers for it. We're called consulting producers, which is very nice of them to
producers.
So it's basically people your age that grew up on the show and love it and are producing it, and they're doing all the hard work, and they're designing it, and they're writing the scripts, and then they'll show us the scripts, and they'll ask us for comments, to consult on them, to give our notes on it, what we think might improve them, or what if we see a problem. And so the way they described our job to us is they wanted us to be their first audience before anybody else sees what they're working on, want us to see it. And so, yes, we're involved in the show.
As is Larry Houston.
As is Larry Houston, who was the designer on the first show. The three of us were all brought on so that we could help with our expertise and our knowledge of what made the show work so well.
Yeah.
And we can't take credit for the producing of it. The writing and the drawing are being done by the young people.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you what are we expecting to see in X-Men 97, but you've already explained that.
Well, and we can tell you, as Disney and Marvel have put out there, that it is the next season of X-Men the Animated Series. If you watch the full 5 seasons of X-Men the Animated Series, this picks up where the show ended 25 years ago. So, better animation, no kidding. We're 30 years ahead of ourselves now, and there's Disney Marvel can put out an amazing looking product, which in the last season of X-Men, when you get there, let us warn you, the art budget had been slashed at that point, and it's going to look different, and it doesn't look great the last season. But X-Men 97, we have confidence that it's going to be a good-looking show, and it will be a continuation of X-Men the Animated Series.
Oh, that's great. Now, I got 2 questions left, and these are from Instagram. I've asked some of my followers to ask you some questions. I only got like 2. The one from Jonas Menz asks, what are some of the most amazing stories you heard from fans of the show?
What do you think that means? You mean what it means to someone personally, or I'm guessing that because
Yeah, there's things like Fad came by and told us that his favorite thing when he was young, when he was little, was watching the show with his grandmother,
yeah,
and that when he was with her in the hospital, and they were watching an episode together when she passed.
and that's
Oh,
amazing to me. And that was when he was a younger person, and here he was 20 odd years later telling us this at a con, and we were all in tears by the end of that. It was remarkably moving.
Yeah,
And then to hear people who watched with their parents who are now watching the show with their own children again on Disney Plus, it's like, oh, that's tremendous. That to be a small part of something that's reached that many lives in that kind of way is amazing and humbling and wonderful.
that's amazing. Now he asked another. Oh, sorry. I
sure.
did not mean to cut y'all off for that
No, no.
answer. And he also asked another question. I'll get to the other question next. He says, "Are we getting any more Mondo action figures?"
Are we saying Mondo, the Mondo action figures?
Yeah.
We are completely removed from anything having to do with any kind of merchandise regarding X-Men, but we can say how impressed we are with the Mondo toy line and the fact that there's this astonishing line of X-Men, the animated series action figures out.
Yeah.
Now, didn't we just get Magneto? Is
Yeah,
that Magneto?
we've got a.
They've been very generous.
When they make
Mondo.
when they make one up, when they have one up to send out, they send us one. So we've got a Wolverine, a Magneto, and a Jubilee, and I understand that they may have a.
We don't know what's coming out yet.
Yeah, yeah.
But Eric, if you want to grab that one, if you see a Mondo figure, there is a mini essay about each character, and Eric and I were invited to write. Eric mostly.
Yeah.
we wrote those mini essays on each of the boxes.
Yeah. So in the box, there's about 200 words about the character, and we did that for Mondo. They're very nice about it.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, one last question. This is from Logan Farrell, 1994.
Okay.
He asked, would you like James Marsden to voice Cyclops in X-Men 97?
Oh, I'm going to guess he's asking that because we lost Norm Spencer, the voice talent, who was our Cyclops.
Yeah.
2 years ago. He died, and that, I mean, oh my God, that was heartbreaking for us. I never ever got the chance to meet him personally.
Yeah, we interviewed him. We talked to him on the phone, and he was
because he's in Canada or was in Canada.
Yeah, and Norm was a great guy and actually very funny, which is hard to think about Cyclops, but in real life, it's very funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as the new guy goes, there's
or who the voice talent will be for X-Men 97.
Yeah, they have somebody wonderful already, and obviously we like and respect James Marsden for his good work in the movies.
Yes,
but
we miss Norm. We're going to miss Norm Spencer forever.
We miss Norm because we thought he was perfect, and B, we think that we've heard some of the recordings of the new guy that's doing the show, and they're really pretty special. So I tell your friend that I think he's going to be very, very satisfied, very excited with the voice of Cyclops in the new show and his presence in the stories.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make sure that they got a response from you once I get this edited for y'all.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I think those are all the questions that I have for y'all. I really appreciate interviewing you guys, because this is actually my first time interviewing those that created the 90s cartoons and everything.
I thought you were the nostalgia guy. Come on.
I am the nostalgia guy.
Man. Come on, Dr. Jazzman.
I am the nostalgia guy. I'm the nostalgia guy. Don't get me wrong. I am the nostalgia guy.
Okay, well, let me put this out there then. Folks, I spend way too much time on Twitter, and I'm trying to do more Instagram. That's where we met, Dr. Jazzman.
Yes.
They're at X-Men TAS, which stands for X-Men the Animated Series. So if you want, find us on Twitter, find us on Instagram. We even have a Facebook page. Let your local cons know if you'd like us to attend. You can reach out to us through those different sites, social media to let us know, or to have a con get in touch with us. So thanks. Yeah.
Sure, and just thanks for having us on.
Oh yes. It's been a really great honor. And be sure to get their books like The X-Men, The Art and Making of the Animated Series, and their previously on X-Men. I thank y'all for tuning in to this wonderful podcast episode, and I want to thank the Lewalds. I don't know how to. I don't know.
You know what? Let's fix that right now. It's pronounced Lewald, which rhymes with he called. There's no way anyone would know just looking at the name.
Okay.
Eric and Julia Lewald.
All right. I want to thank Mr. Eric and Miss Julia Lewald for coming into my podcast today. If you want to hear more from me, you can check me out on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, as well as this podcast, Let's Get Nostalgic. Well, guys, it's been a pleasure coming back, doing this podcast. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you. Until we meet again.
Okay. All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.